welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. So I would actually like to introduce Billy Allen of Chopshop Mediaworks. He is going to be doing our sponsor introduction for this session, and Billy and his team are great. They do the promos for the conference, and they have like a whole, running list of a lot of different media production services that they provide. All right, so let's run the video. Thank you.
Hey there, Billy Allen, co-founder of Chopshop Mediaworks here. Chopshop specializes in taking footage from brands, retailers, experience providers, and all sorts of companies, and turning it into valuable content that drives engagement and sell-through. And while we specialize in editing, we can help with videography, photography, animation, motion graphics, and a whole variety of service offerings. Really any sort of content you could need. Sustainability is important to us because we rely on the natural environment around us for much of our business and all of our pleasure. And while much of our business exists in the cloud, the human relationships and B2B partnerships we forge are as real as the earth in which we live. So sustainability is crucial to maintaining it all. And social responsibility is important to us because, well, we just believe in doing the right thing. And that's why we support NHBSR. It's my privilege today to open up the Trans 101 crash course, in which our presenter Chloe Lacasse will share how understanding lifts communities. I hope you enjoy.
Well, that was fantastic.
It's all you, Chloe.
So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm Chloe Lacasse with The Making of Self. I'm going to pull up my slides because I've been told we can see both things at the same time. So actually, you know what? I'm going to pause on that now that I think of it. So I've heard so many of the conference talks as well as the keynotes, and the running theme is, moving forward, we need to broaden our horizons. And that is in everything from how we conduct business, pre-COVID, how we conduct business now post-COVID. And I think with all of the social justice issues being brought to the forefront over the last several years, both in the LGBT community with trans folks, as well as the BLM community with people of color, it's really, really important to think about diversity. It's really, really important to think about including more voices into our world. It's really easy to get into that echo chamber, as anyone can see on social media nowadays. So it's really important to try to bring voices in and sit people down. So that being said, I'm transgender. Nice to meet you. I am 49. I just turned 49. So I got several more months before I turn 50, which only you on this call will know. No one else will ever know. And so I came out about 4 years ago, came out in 2016. And it was for me a revelation. There were bits and pieces and breadcrumbs that were there ever since I was a small child. Anybody who has read anything about trans identities, whether they're youth or older people come out midlife like myself, basically, it's one of those things where children know either who they are or that something's going on. They're being treated differently than they feel they should be. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I was the firstborn. So I have 5 years on my sister, Heather. And so my mom was mine. She was my love. She still is. She's wonderful. She's my champion. And even then, she was raised in a world, raised Irish Catholic, and there's very narrow lanes for little boys. So, I would constantly go into her things. I would constantly really, really want to express femininity. However, it was very lovingly and thoughtfully put away. No, that's mommy's, boys don't do that. So there it went, quite frankly. It was quite easily displaced from, the person that they were, that society was trying to build, which is a strong man who's going to labor, find a wife and, raise a family and do all the things, the, American dream. And so went my life. It was put into the closet, quite literally. It's such an apt phrase. I'm gonna take a sip of water, excuse me. It's such an apt phrase because literally I had women's clothing stored in my closet deep down in the back where no potential partner could find it, heterosexual guy. And so I went on, I lived this dreary, I would even call it, always under cloudy skies life. And that's the way it went for the entirety of my life. Never really had a long-term relationship, worked in construction, commercial construction. So You can, for those of us who kind of understand the world of construction or see it, I mean, the way it's displayed on TV and in movies and stuff, it's very true. Very rough and tumble, very misogynistic, very, very, in New Hampshire here, very white. And so, you roll the punches. You're earning a living, you're moving forward, and you're doing your thing. I was miserable. I was a miserable, miserable human being. I would never dare tell anybody what I would do in my spare time, which was, get dressed up and just, there was some feeling of just relief, like endorphins would get released through your body. And I'd feel so guilty for feeling that. And I never understood why. However, I never questioned it. It was something that I did that was taboo, and I put it away. In 2014, I met a woman, and that started a series of 3 relationships over 2 years that really, really cracked me open, blew me up, and helped a new flower grow, quite literally. The first relationship sort of just blew up everything I thought I knew about myself, about relationships, about love, about where I was, what my space was in a relationship, the rules and the things that I was supposed to do in a relationship as a man. Then after that, I was lucky to find someone who really just kind of lullabied me back to life. Very short-lived relationship, and we parted ways. And it was the summer of 2016 where I really started to look deeper into that closet. I left a door open. I started experimenting both with my sexuality, with my identity. And by the fall of 2016, I had what I call, anybody who's seen the movie Sixth Sense, my Sixth Sense moment, where, at the end of that movie, spoiler alert here, where he realizes that he's dead. So that moment for me happened in the mirror because I was taking a very low dose of estrogen at the time off the interwebs, because that's just what guys did. That should have been telltale right there. But so I started seeing a figure develop, and that figure reflected back. I suddenly saw the person that I had always been, that I'd never truly believed existed, and I was told certainly didn't exist. So there began my new life as Chloe. And as it happens, 2017 and 2018 found the non-discrimination campaign here in New Hampshire for trans non-discrimination. In 2018, bipartisan support, Governor Sununu signed that bill, and we now have trans protections added to the other lists of protected classes here in New Hampshire. So with regards to a job, with regards to apartments, public spaces, that I along with other trans or gender diverse folks, cannot be discriminated against. So that being said, I'm but one person. I come and go, and I pretty passable, as they say, stealth. So a lot of the times I just kind of come and go, here and there, and people don't look twice. So I love opportunities like this to talk to the community and talk to, businesses in this instance who either who are having, just want to be more inclusive. Should somebody, that they seek to hire, somebody that they have as an employee decides to come out, to know what to do and to understand sort of the underpinnings of what the trans identity is, and not be afraid by it, I think, first and foremost, but just understand a little bit more about the nuance that trans folks are not so different than cisgender folks. We're just living our lives in a little bit different way. And I would say in Technicolor. I'm going to take another sip of water. And then I'm going to jump into, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody will see this. Display 2. Excellent. You see that? I got to click it. Oh, I got to click share. Here we go. Excellent. Do you see my slides? Do you guys see my slides?
We have you.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
You do?
Yes,
awesome.
You're all good.
Good, awesome. So if you want to take down, I have a blog, themakingofself.com. You can find me on Facebook. That's kind of currently my de facto business page. And my email is themakingofself@gmail.com. So I was lucky enough to get into advocacy. And in advocacy, I found my voice. I found that I had a knack for talking to people. I had a knack for sharing my story. I had a knack for bringing to the surface questions that people don't dare ask, and we have a lot of misconceptions about what it means to be trans. So hopefully this slide deck will hopefully get folks sort of, get their mind wrapped around. For some of you who already kind of know, that's awesome. This might help you a little bit more. This being said, as we go through this, if you have some questions you want to ask, we're going to have about a 10-15 minute Q&A session at the end live. So for those who want to ask questions, almost anything, obviously, nothing too personal, but about business, how to enact best practices, or just, questions about me and things that I mentioned during the talk, feel free. And you're going to do that by just putting a little asterisk by your name. Just go in and rename yourself by adding a little asterisk, and that's going to float you to the top of the pile, as it were, and we'll be able to, you can ask a question and then I'll answer it as best as I can. And then certainly after the fact, if anybody wants to shoot me an email, by all means, I am all for it. So let's begin. So the world around us is crazy the last several years. And my God, you would think that, the trans identity wouldn't be one of those things with all that's been going on these last 4 years specifically. And I made this little meme up. I put this online some time ago and people got a kick out of it. And I'm going to use a Southern voice, and I apologize to anybody from the South just because I love it. I don't know about this transgender stuff. And I don't know why that always happens. I feel like that's just folks don't get it. So here we are. Why trans people need more visibility. This is from the TSER site. Their information's down on the bottom there. They're a great resource for specifically for youth, but even for trans identities in general. 50% of folks report being assaulted or raped by a romantic partner. I think these are all very, very real. And I think it's easy to lose sight of what's going on outside of our sphere. 1 in 5 transgender people have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. 1 in 8 have been evicted due to being transgender. And this is why things like the Equality Act currently in the Senate and down in Washington is so important. That here in New Hampshire with the trans non-discrimination protections, I and others have protection. We cannot be evicted or denied housing because of who we are. And then I think a big one here too is trans people, 41% of trans people have attempted suicide at one point in their life. For me, I never came that far because I was so in the dark about my identity. But certainly since, there's been a lot of things in my personal life over the years that since coming out that have, put me in a really bad place. So I'm lucky that I have enough support, and including just this incredible LGBT community here in New Hampshire. So I'm very lucky that I haven't faced that, but many, many people do. Current events, like I mentioned, 2018, New Hampshire passed transgender non-discrimination protections, which is awesome. Congress is currently considering the Equality Act, which would grant equal protections under federal law for all LGBTQIA Americans. Last spring, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that in employment, which is now a national law, trans identities, gay identities, you cannot be fired or not hired specifically for being trans or being gay. So that is like one leg of that three-legged stool. And then in 2021, if anybody's been kind of current events here, 2020 has seen an onslaught of anti-trans bills filed across the country, including New Hampshire, which we've basically beat back. And we have a governor who signed those trans protections. So I think we're pretty safe here. But all of these bills are seeking to invalidate and or criminalize transgender people and their loved ones. So in order to really talk about the trans identity, we got to talk about the binary. The binary or heteronormative culture is just a cultural belief that everybody's raised with. It is this baser programming that we place into children that people fall into two distinct groups. And the complementary genders, right? I met that missing part of me. You complete me, I think is Jerry Maguire, if I'm not mistaken. Movie I still have yet to see. And that these men and women have natural roles in life. You watch any Hollywood movie, I mean, honest to God, it's really, really apparent. It asserts that heterosexuality is the only sexual orientation or the only norm. It states that sexual and marital relations are mostly fitting between people of opposite sexes. Consequently, that heteronormative view is one that involves alignment of biological sex. I say unfortunately, consequently, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender roles. It's very specific. There's very narrow lanes. So, and we assign gender to literally everything from kids' toys to deodorants, the clothes we wear, the jobs we have. You have a newborn baby. It's not, my God, that baby is so beautiful. And are they healthy? Oh, that's so great. It's like, what genitals do they have? And parents go out of their way to identify their little girls with a bow because somehow that's been lifted and made important. Like, why is that important? I have a baby. They're healthy. They're awesome. They're incredible. They're developing this amazing personality. But we gender that. And it's really unfortunate because as we know, in the feminine movement has taught us over the last 30 years is that women are not just their bodies. Women are not just objects. Women are not stupid. There's no male brain and female brain. We train our children to be the adults that they become. So I have a video here I'm going to play. It's a commercial from a few years ago. It should play. It's played for me all the time. Molly, cross your fingers. And this is just, this is just the perfect example of how the binary works. Y'all hear this, I hope.
Did you know you're using it? That was close.
That volume was not loud because it's playing through my speakers. I apologize. So basically, I mean, you got the gist from the video itself. This is Summer's Eve. It's a feminine hygiene wash. Basically, he's using it as a body wash and then freaks out because, God forbid, anything feminine come in contact with his body. And so he goes on this masculine tear, and he goes through all the series of things that makes a man, which are all completely ridiculous. And I think that's really important for folks to sit back, and when they're thinking about the trans identity, trans femme specifically, I think, because we've given a lot of birth to cisgender women who want to expand, not wear the makeup and have the hair and the fancy clothes and the high heels, but women in society today are have earned this for sure over the last 30 odd years. To really expand those boundaries, those social boundaries. And a woman can wear work boots, a woman can wear anything she wants and still be considered a woman. Some folks may go, oh, is she a gay woman? Which is inappropriate. However, I have now an amazing wardrobe that I love to flaunt, especially in summer. So people oftentimes think that, oh goodness, if you're coming out as a trans woman, it obviously means you're gay. And that is not true. So cisgender and transgender, those two terms we hear, some people take exception with that prefix. And they're really, at the end of the day, they're just a pair of Latin prefixes that are used in medical books and in the medical world. Cis is a Latin prefix that identifies individuals who their gender identity, expression, or behavior align with those typically associated with their sex assigned at birth, whereas transgender is used as an umbrella term for individuals whose gender identity, expression, or behavior is not traditionally associated with their sex assigned at birth. We go back to the heteronormative training that we receive as children. And again, as an umbrella term, it means everything from trans women to trans men, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, genderqueer. These are a lot of different phrases of identities where people just, it's this hard left and this hard right. If you picture our identities as a rainbow between two pots of gold, as it were. We put boys over here, we put girls over there, and there's a rainbow in between. And these identities, including mine, are just up on that rainbow. Having escaped that little bucket and now living on the rainbow, I can't imagine ever being forced to go back to the person I was. Some would say I would rather be dead. That's not living. So what is the difference between sex, gender identity, gender expression, and orientation? This is the gender unicorn. they, them. It's not a he or a she. They're a little geeky looking thing. Sex and gender. Here we go. Gender identity is one's intense sense of gender expression, and then sex assigned at birth. So one's internal sense of being male, female, neither of these, both or another gender. Everyone has a gender identity. Gender expression, of course, is the heart of the matter. The way you present gender through your actions, your dress, your demeanor, how those presentations are interpreted based on these gender norms. And then sex assigned at birth. So the assignment and classification of people as male, female, intersex, or another sex is a combination of anatomy, hormones, chromosomes. And chromosomes are not an indicator. Some folks like to say, well, the chromosomes say. The reality is folks have varying chromosomes. Intersex folks, anybody who is an intersex person or who has gone through the trauma of that as a child can speak better to that. But chromosomes are not the only indicator of what makes a boy or a girl a girl. And then orientation, sexual orientation, is that physical and sexual being sexually attracted to somebody. And it's important to note that sexual and romantic emotional attraction can be formed in a variety of factors. And not limited to gender. It's not about penis and vagina so much as it's about identity. It's about expression, presentation, intellect, humor. It's all of these things that when we fall in love with somebody or we're attracted to somebody, it's so much more than just the vehicle that they happen to be in. And romantic and emotional, it's just really the same concept. Okay, so we're going to go through romantically attracted to. And again, just to pick up on that, it's when we fall in love, when we're attracted to somebody, it's the conversation, it's the person. Is it aesthetics? Sure. But we don't get married because of somebody's aesthetics, or at least we shouldn't, unless you live in Hollywood, I suppose. So for me, this is a great little chart to sort of break down these things. So gender identity, I identify as a woman, she, her, hers. I am not identifying whatsoever with the person I once was, or any other gender for that matter. My gender expression is very feminine, not masculine at all. In fact, when I do find myself looking or feeling masculine, it bums me out to something fierce. I was assigned male at birth, of course, and I'm physically attracted. I identify as pansexual, and that's a phrase that I just really like things fried in a pan. I love saute, and I am not going to apologize for that, quite frankly. So pansexual basically means that you are attracted to people, and you're attracted to all those elements of a person, not just in a physical aesthetic or what their gender is, which is kind of great because it opens up the world to potential partners and just, and close friends. So now just shifting gears a little bit to affirming workspaces. Now that we sort of have an understanding a little bit more of what it is to be trans, we can now start to think a little bit more about how we integrate a trans person into our workplace. People who are gay, who identify as gay, who might not be out at work, they might be sort of closeted at work, and people make their decisions, their personal decisions as they see fit, and that's fine. However, when somebody does want to come out at work, or you are interviewing somebody, say I show up at your interview and say, hey, I'm Chloe Lacasse, I'm a trans woman. Having this basic understanding of the trans identity, I think really prepares us for how we would work with a trans person, which is to say, as you would work with anybody else. Even as more and more folks are coming out, many workplaces, as we know, still lag behind. Certainly the construction industry that'll be one of the last things that ever come along. But there are basic tools for HR departments and small employers alike to really, really welcome LGBTQIA employees. Obviously transitioning is an extremely emotional process for the individual, and it can be a big adjustment for an employer as well, especially if you have an employer who's out on the front side of the store, or representing the company, and they're changing their attire, and how do you navigate those accounts and things like that? It needs to be done very thoughtfully, respectfully, and and in some cases delicately. It doesn't need to be difficult. It doesn't need to be difficult at all. For small employers or HR departments, you can adopt easy to follow inclusive policies for transitioning employees. And those Transgender Law Center, you just search them on Google. They have some great resources for model policies, which just help HR departments, navigate with the employee all the steps necessary to make that transition as smoothly as possible. And that really is basically by education. I think these 101 workshops, whether you hold them in person with your employees, with hiring managers and managers alike, I think really help if you are experiencing people coming out or you have people that may be coming in that may be trans. And one of the most important things here is dialogue. So my mom, when I first started coming out, didn't get it. She does now, of course, and she loves every bit of it. Now I wear her clothes all the time, FYI. But transgendered, it's not transgendered, it's transgender. Intersexed, it's intersex. Transgendered is just really one of those. Transition is the appropriate word. Transgenders is obviously not good. A transgender person is a transgender person. She is transgender. I am transgender. Sex change and reassignment surgery and gender reassignment surgery, obviously those aren't questions that we would ask anybody, would not ask a stranger about their genitals, and it's good form not to ask a trans person either. Although those things are called gender affirming surgery or genital reconstructive surgery, is reassignment surgery. And I think the biggest thing we have to remember is name and pronoun. A lot of folks change their first name, leave their last name. I changed both my names because the hell with my dad. So that goes to show there's a little bit of history there. But pronouns. She, hers, he, him, they, theirs. Really important. There is nothing more simplistic and rewarding for a trans person to hear than their name and then the pronoun. And it really is the most respectful way to go about things. You might have a little bit of trouble for folks who have been with a company for many years. They know him as Doug, big burly guy, and Doug starts to look a little different, and it is an adjustment, admittedly. Sometimes you may not know what somebody's pronoun is, and it's certainly easy to ask which ones they use. Which pronouns do you use? And if you happen to make a mistake, you don't have to. The world is not crashing around you. There's no need to go into a panic or a cold sweat. Simply just apologize and move on. And then I'll go real through this quick. Like it says, she, hers, her, herself, he, him, his, himself, they, them, theirs, and themself. And z, her, zer, it never really, I have not met anybody who's used those pronouns. So I'm not really sure if those have, I say, taken off, but I think it's the three big ones are, folks going in opposite directions from he to she to he, and folks who identify as non-binary, which again, if you're thinking about that rainbow, non-binary people are just like, no, I'm dead set in the middle. I don't want to be identified as a boy or a girl. I'm me. And I think that's pretty fair. So creating a trans-affirming environment is really, it's about listening. It's about names and pronouns. It's about, offering, restrooms or locker rooms that, to people as they identify, and, excluding folks from normal day-to-day life creates so much tension. And this is why education is so important. And then here in New Hampshire, for folks who are in New Hampshire, Rural Outright is a great resource out on the coast. Over in Keene, Claremont, Keene area, Seacoast Outright. The ACLU, of course, is always, just call them up. They have been at the forefront of so many of the things going on. Transgender New Hampshire is a great resource on Facebook. GLSEN, of course. The Equality Health Center and Planned Parenthood both have trans-related care. So, if your insurance plans are considering, what to carry and where to direct people. PFLAG, of course, is great for families. And then the Transgender Law Center, as I mentioned, is really a super great resource. In fact, it's where I get a lot of my material. And then, so what is gender? that's the big question. And I always love to show these photos because it is that dramatic. The person on the left was a cool cat. He did have painted toes, if you can zoom in there. This is at a bodega here in Concord. And it really, really, so much of the way the world perceives us is because of the vehicle we're traveling in and how we decorate that vehicle. And confidence counts. Oh my God, it does. And that person on the left was a really confident guy. But behind those eyes, in that body, in that heart and mind, they were miserable. Today, this is actually about a year ago at a GLAD event, or right before COVID, just a bathroom selfie, just how many bathroom selfies have cis women or, women taken. And it's awesome. It's awesome to be really proud of something. So now I want to shift gears, and I'm going to drop this screen share in a second here. For those of you who have questions and want to ask, feel free to ask. Put an asterisk by your name if you already haven't, and we'll take some questions and roll out the rest of our time here. And I'm going to try to cancel this stop screen share if I can find it. Why can't I see my arrow? Jess, why can't I see it? There we go. Stop share. I'm still sharing. I shouldn't be sharing. I don't want to share anymore. There we go. So who would like to ask a question? I'll turn to Mark here to give me a little of assistance on this one.
Thanks, Chloe. Not seeing any questions in the chat board. If anyone else has any questions, let us know. I'm sure there's got to be something.
Yeah, so we would encourage you to enter in your questions in the chat, or also unmute yourself and ask them live. I guess if we aren't seeing anything right now, I'm wondering, because Chloe, you've given a number of these talks. Are there a few questions that sort of like float to the surface?
Yeah, I think one of the ones is, I think quite simply, is we're so beholden to how we perceive somebody. A guy grows a beard, has a beard for 20 years or 10 years or a period of time, and shaves that beard, and people are like, oh my God, your face, Bobby, just, and there's so much, I always saw you as, this rough and tumble, you have no chin, or whatever. And masculinity and femininity are these, we're taught that they're absolute constructs that, and the world treats them as such. I mean, let's be fair, is that, that when we leave our home and when we interact with people, we're interacting with people, in many, depending on where we are, at a deficit. People look at me differently than they once did. People want to pick stuff up for me. People want to grab the door for me. Some of those things are lovely. They're great. I never would have had that back in the day. However, nowadays it's, people presume I can't do that. People don't think that I'm, intelligent, that I can operate a camera. I obviously can't operate a freaking screen share, but please help me. Is there a man out there that can help me? So I think that is really, really important. And I think for men specifically, I can speak to just how narrow those lanes were, and how terrifying it was for me to display any shred of color. I used to use Starbucks, I'm going to name them, as like a litmus test during the weekend, because I was working in construction at the time. And I would literally stand in front of my mirror, which is actually just off my shoulder there, like arguing with myself about wearing a deeper V t-shirt, because I was terrified that was too much. And I think a lot of men, sort of just hang it up, and, anybody who's, married or dated a man where we got to go to a function, you got to go to a funeral, you got to go to a wedding, you got to go to something where you got to put pants on. And, men you have to drag them kicking and screaming. For me, I pushed those boundaries as much as I could, but at the end of the day, I still, I could only wear so many things in so many colors. And I think that's really, when we're thinking about an employee, working with the HR department and sitting down and going, this is what's going on, to make that transition, to give enough time for all parties involved, because you do have to think about the other employees. especially if you're in a managing position, to really, get folks up to speed that, they may be changing their outward appearance. They may speak a little different. They may look a little different, but the person inside is the same. And they not only are going to be better at their job, they're going to have more heart behind that. And I think when we talk about, so I'm going to pull from Margaret's, keynote yesterday. It's a new world. COVID really has made a break for us as a society and as businesses and as organizations to really expand and move forward and not apologize for it. The remote world is a new and real thing. In person is going to change forever. However, diversity is key. It's absolutely key. Having an open mind, bringing more people into the fold, like I started this talk with. And then today, I'm looking down at my notes. Emily had mentioned, "Done are the days of the lone wolf." That is a really powerful, so powerful. I had to take a sip of water. Really powerful statement, and it is for I think, and I speak for all the cisgender men out there who are lost in space, that you can be so much more. You can expand those, you can flex those muscles and adopt and become softer, more thoughtful, really lean on your empathetic self and bring that about and lift that in yourself. And when you do that, you're going to lift that in others around you. And I think when we talk about a workplace that's really cohesive and firing on all cylinders, as they would say in the NASCAR world, that's what we want. That's what we want to see. Do I have any questions?
Thank
I
you.
have a question, Chloe. I wrote
Yeah,
it in
go
the
for it.
chat, but I'll say it out loud too. I guess that could be two different answers, because somebody could be an acquaintance or someone could be a coworker who you know well. When they are at that point that they are either coming out or as trans or saying that they're going to transition, what is the best thing that you can say to them, like the actual words, to have them know that you support them?
I think the simple phrase, I see you. I see you, and we're going to do this together. I think, for me, when I came out in the construction industry. Well, I came out in my personal life while working in the construction industry, and I didn't say anything. In 2018 is when I went full time in April of 2018, and I went into nonprofit actually at that point. But yeah, I think they knew I was trans going in because I worked on the campaign trail with them. So I didn't have to go through that. Presumably, I'm going to have to go through this with an employer again in the future if I seek employment and not working for myself. But yeah, I think for folks, when they come out to friends, where they come out to at work, who and wherever they're coming out to, it's super important for folks to really see that person, look them in the eye and say, "I got you, we got this." Or, President Biden said the other day, "We got your back." And I think that's super important. And then working together, to move that ball forward. So everybody, hopefully everybody will have that same reaction ultimately.
Chloe, I put a question in the
Cool.
chat, but
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, I'll ask you directly. So I have a niece who lives in LA and is considering moving to New England.
Yeah.
Pretty serious about it. And I was wondering, the question was, is New Hampshire more or less welcoming to trans people than other New England states in your experience, from what you know?
In my personal experience, I live in Concord here. I have not had any issues at all whatsoever. And and I'll knock wood. I've been very, very fortunate, and I'm out and about, quite a bit, or as much as COVID will allow these days. But yeah, no, I think I think it's safe to say in any region that you move to, overall, let's face it, New Hampshire is a very, what is it, a maroon state. And so the metropolitan areas, Portsmouth, Concord, Manchester, even Nashua, obviously there's more folks and there's more openness there. It doesn't mean people won't find, trouble or run into trouble. But overall, I can attest to people that I know, for the most part, I have not heard of any major incidents in my circle of friends that people have had any issues. identifying as who they are proudly and being, called out for it, so to say.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Thank you. And then I would also encourage anyone who has additional questions to reach out to Chloe directly. So Chloe, should I share the Making of Self email in the chat?
Yes, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, like I said, if you have, you want to talk more about best practices and about some of if you go to the Transgender Law Center website, like I said, they have plenty of documents that you can download, you can read, and if you wanted to sit with those, we can interpret them together. And just basic questions. Just if you have somebody in your family or your friend group that may be coming out, or you've heard and you just want to know more about how to welcome them and make them feel at home and respected, shoot me an email, and I will definitely email everybody back. And don't send me coupons or anything. I mean, let's.
All right, thank you, Chloe.